What's up, YouTube? This is Keith, and you're watching Less Magic, More Gathering. Today we are going to be doing Random Card Deck Tech Volume 12, working with Wildfire Eternal. Got a red-blue deck to go over with you, and I went ahead and made this a standard legal deck with Dominaria cards in it. So let's get started. Alright, so as you can here, we've got our 4 copies of Wildfire Eternal. Gonna go ahead and skip from the Wildfire Eternal to some of the spells that we can cast with the Wildfire Eternal's ability. So the Wildfire Eternal is a 4-drop 1/4 with Afflict 4. Whenever it attacks and isn't blocked, you can cast an instant or sorcery from your hand without paying its mana cost. So what we ended up doing was going with some of the new spells that have kicker costs. So the thought behind that is that if we've got the right amount of mana, we can cast these without paying for them, but you can pay that additional kicker cost. So like here we've got 3 copies of Fight with Fire. It's regularly a 3-drop, which is 3-drop, 5 damage to target creature. It's still good spell on its own, even if you can't kick it. But if you can, if you've got the 6 mana and you swing with your Eternal and it's not blocked, then you can cast this for free, pay the kicker cost, and distribute 10 damage any way you choose among any number of targets. So that seemed like a good card to put in here, because like I said, you get to cast it for free, but you can pay that kicker cost. The other one is Goblin Barrage. It's a 4-drop, does 4 damage to target creature. The kicker cost on this one is sacrificing an artifact or goblin. We went with goblins, and you'll see that when we get into our creature base, but there are a lot of goblins in this deck that once they come into play, they've done their job. You shouldn't have any problem sacrificing them. We also put in a few copies of Squee, and Squee's good for sacrificing. He's just a 2/1, but he can be cast from your graveyard, and he can also be cast from exile. So you can sacrifice him and recast him. So Goblin Barrage is a 4-drop regularly, does 4 damage to target creature. If you sacrifice an artifact or goblin with it, it's also going to do 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. So if you're casting this with the Wildfire Eternal trigger, then all you have to do is sacrifice a 1/1 goblin and you're doing 8 damage. So that seemed like good efficiency as well. We've also got, for earlier in the game when you might not have that 6 damage, or if you've lost some of your what did I just say? Earlier in the game when you might not have the extra 6 mana. Maybe that's what I said and forgot. I don't know. Anyway, but if you don't have the mana or the goblins to pay the kicker cost to one of the others, you can just cast Blink of an Eye. Kicker is only 2, and it's only a 2-drop anyway. So you can return a permanent to its owner's hand and draw a card. So we wanted to get some card draw in this, because if you're casting spells as well as, you know, triggering off Wildfire Eternal and casting them for free, it's good to be able to get those cards, you know, some cards back in your hand. So we went with 2 copies of Blink of an Eye, and we also went with 3 copies of Curious Obsession. It's an enchant creature, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Whenever it deals damage to a player, you draw a card. When you put this on something, you do have to attack with a creature every turn, or you have to sacrifice Curious Obsession. So we also put in one with the Wind. This is going to give a creature 2/2 and flying. So that's going to help with our Wildfire Eternal and some of our other creatures. Even if we don't get that out there, that's no big deal. We put this on there, it gains flying, and that's going to help us get up over. And with the Wildfire Eternal, makes it so that maybe it can't be blocked. If they don't have a flyer, they might not have the option of blocking it, so you'll get to cast some of those spells. Went with 2 copies of Jaya Ballard, or Jaya Ballard. So I don't know how you want to say it, but I say it Jaya Ballard. So that's what I'm going with. Gives you 3 mana. The +1 gives you 3 red mana that you can spend to cast instant or sorcery spells. So that's going to help you, with your other spells over here. So that, this one casts for free, and then you can use other mana to put towards the kicker cost. And Goblin Barrage essentially casts for 1. So that's good ability. The next one is discard up to 3 cards and draw that many cards. So if you're sitting with a handful of something that you can't use for whatever reason, or you don't want at that particular time, you can get some new cards in your hand. Those are both +1 abilities. And then her ultimate, if you can get to it, is you get an emblem with, you may cast instant or sorcery cards from your graveyard. So once you've cast some of these and they're in the graveyard, you ultimate her, get the emblem, and then you can recast those. So that seemed to be, in testing, pretty helpful. You do have to protect her, clearly, to get to that ultimate, and a lot of times your opponent's just not going to let you get there. But once you do, it's better to just go ahead and ultimate that and get the emblem, let her go, and then you can, because by that time you're usually deeper in the game and you've got mana that you can use to cast some of these other spells again. Now on to our creature base here. Like I said, we went with 4 Wildfire Eternal. We also went with 4 Wily Goblin. I don't know, I think I've got some kind of obsession with Wily Goblin. But a 2-drop that gives you a treasure really helps you ramp into some of these other, Wildfire Eternal or your Siege Gang Commander, which we'll get to in a minute. And even some of these other spells that have higher kicker costs. Having that treasure token there is handy sometimes. So I went with 4 copies of Wily Goblin, and then 4 copies of Squee, like I talked about earlier. There's multiple different options in here where you can sacrifice a goblin to do something else, like pay the kicker cost on the Goblin Barrage, or with the Skirk Prospector you can add a red for sacking a goblin, and Siege Gang Commander you can sack a goblin to do 2 damage to any target. So we put in multiple copies of Squee so that we can make sure that we keep one on the battlefield, even if that means that we have one on the battlefield and in the graveyard. Then it kind of gives us options for when we want to cast those. We can sack one, we can cast one from the graveyard, sack one from the battlefield, instead of having to, instead of waiting for the legendary rule to come into effect, you can sack it as a instant speed and not have to worry about that. So just kind of alternate back and forth between the graveyard and the battlefield, and make sure that you've always got something out there. So we went 3 copies of the Skirk Prospector. Another way that, later when we're trying to pay some of these kicker costs or activate abilities like Siege Gang Commanders, we can maybe just sacrifice off a couple goblins to get that extra mana we might need. And then, like I've said a few times, we got a Siege Gang Commander in here, 2 copies. When he enters the battlefield, you create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, and then you can pay 2, a red and 1 other, sack a goblin, and he deals 2 damage to any target. And then we also went with 3 copies of the Goblin Chain Whirler, 3/3 with first strike. When it enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. So that's a good way to, especially against things like tokens and things like that, other goblin decks, you can really spread out a lot of damage and help yourself stay in the game. That baby is screaming something furious. I think Mom took care of it. She's pretty good at that kind of stuff. So that's our creature base. As you can see, all the creatures are red creatures. And then most everything in the deck is red, except for these couple blue spells here. But they seemed... I started out mono red, and for some reason Tapped Out hasn't updated this, so I don't know. This is no longer accurate, but as you can see, I've added in a little bit of blue, and I just really felt like it helped out with being able to get some of that damage through that we weren't able to get through before. And it gave us a better option for some of the spells and things, and got us card draw. I was running out of cards a lot when I was running red, mono red, so having the blue in there to help refill our hand really helped out. Mana base, we went with 4 copies of each of the red-blue lands that are in Standard right now. Spire Bluff Canal will drop off in come October, but for now we've got 3 red-blue lands in Standard. Spire Bluff Canal, Sulphur Falls, I love that art. That's one of my favorite cards from Dominaria. Look at that. That's not much bigger than the one we had a minute ago, is it? So, anyway, now I gotta go back through here, get back into my deck. Sorry. So, what was I doing? Look, it's reverted back to the other version of this deck. Oh my gosh. But it's not changed over here. Tapped Out is going crazy today. So, anyway, the land base is 4 of each of the red-blue lands and 4 islands and 7 mountains. Can't see it right now, so I'm just kind of guessing. I don't know why it's doing this to me. Let's take a look, see if we can get this thing fixed. I hate running through looking like an idiot like this, but this is right. 7 mountains, 4 islands, and 3 of each, or 4 of each of the dual color lands. Let's go down here and press save, see if it brings up the right deck. Sorry, people. Sorry, party people. There we go. Alright, and like if you look here, this is definitely a budget deck. Get the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle for 61 bucks off TCG Player. So that is not a bad price for a deck that's running some planeswalkers and legendary creatures. Lots of new stuff in there. In testing, like I said, the mono red just wasn't quite working right, but this adding in the blue definitely seemed to help. Got a lot more options for refilling our hand. So that's the deck for this week, and if you'd like to take a look, there is a link in the description. You can go check it out on Tapped Out. Let me know in the comments section what changes you might make, how you would do it differently. I always appreciate everybody's input, good, bad, or indifferent. So you can feel free to tell me that I've done something stupid, and I will not be upset with you. But thanks for watching. Make sure you check back next time. We're going to be opening a couple boxes of Dominaria. We are still getting some cards together for our first care package for Operation Booster Packs. So make sure that if you know anyone that would be interested in receiving cards that is in the military and deployed overseas, get their address for us and send us an email at lessmagicmoregathering@gmail.com, and we will put together a care package and get it sent overseas for them so that they can have some cards while they're there. Appreciate you watching. See you next time. Deuces.